This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I want to talk about our inner animal and the myth of the human intrinsic evilness. We all know, or at least most of us accept, that human beings are part of the animal kingdom. Therefore, we have drives such as pulsions, desires, um, many forms of natural part of our natural constitution as living beings, part of a living community that influence our behavior. Of course, it influences our behavior in different ways, and the intensity on different time on different periods of our lives, and it needs to be addressed. So our inner animal needs to be understood. And the point is, many people and theories and hypotheses and philosophical papers and whatever it is try to associate, to link human evilness, the cruelty, and other forms of violent, the when people make make very bad crimes against children, against women, against the elderly. Against it is kind of as intrinsically or implicitly assumed that it has to do with the inner animal, with our animality that is kind of comes up and takes over our rationality, our ability to be rational beings and therefore supposedly moral beings, and this is just a myth. Okay, it's not because our animality, our inner animal, doesn't have a tremendous, the pulsions, the desires, the passions, they do have a huge influence on us. It's not, it is, that's true, but that is not, and that can influence, not that can, no, that does influence our behavior, and can be very, and can be expressed through violent behavior. But it doesn't mean that most of the crimes against humanity, such as genocide and the crimes that are committed during war periods, can be explained only through the inner animal. We cannot separate it from the cultural, uh, the socio-cultural and ideological influence. Our morals, the way we perceive morality in human beings, are always ideologically and culturally weaponized. It is, we perceive, we know, we can understand wrong and right, but we usually are influenced by what we perceive as wrong and right, associated with an ideological and cultural framing, which is always also a political and economic framing. So, and our behavior under stress and or under stress circumstances or extreme circumstances of survival, it is sure that our instincts, survival instincts, and that our basic emotions, as it does in any animal that feels cornered, the reaction is not exactly that we respond. We respond with first to have a reflection about it, to reflect, and by reflection, I'm not talking about rationality, because rationality in human beings is always more following a logic. We associate rationality with the pursuit of truth, with the pursuit of higher values, such as truth, justice, for example. But that with the pursuit of following, following facts. But that's not how human minds work. The human mind follows logic. For most of the time, because what we think it's rationality, it's when we really do our best, and it's always with limitations because of our biases and prejudices, that we try to be intellectually honest and try to search, to explain, not to justify. We try to explain, not to justify, which is another feature of the human supposed rationality, which is not rationality, it's logic. We follow logic, and that logic comes from exactly the dominant narratives, the dominant cultural ideological narratives, the frame of mind, the subconscious frame of mind that we use at the subconscious level. That is our resource. It's not a resource. It's not exactly a resource. It's a living apparatus that gives us the patterns, that gives us the framework through which we rationalize reality and respond, and most of the time we react. We don't even our behavior is reactive. That's why it doesn't come from reflection. It comes from a response that is already there, following a logic that has nothing to do with the truth or sound knowledge. It has to do with assumptions, with the collection of certainties that we use as sound knowledge. We use at the subconscious level, okay, to make inferences and deductions that we assume as truth, because it's our truth. It's the truth that exists in our living systems. In our brain, is part of our organic, biological feature, is part of our organism. It's part of us as a living being. That's why it's so important to understand. The knowledge is, we don't have the knowledge in our brain as the shelves of a library, you know, where you have these separations. I mean, of course, we have the knowledge, we can understand the knowledge in separation. But we have to understand the knowledge is a dynamic, it exists as part of a living organism, which means that there are interactions, which means that we do not have, we have the ability to use this storage of information to make conscious reflections. But we cannot escape the paradigms that exist, the dominant paradigms that frame the way, that already give us a frame of work. And this is very important to understand, how this always takes part in how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive others, how we perceive the environment, the socio-economic environment, the socio-cultural, ideological environment, where we live, where we have to survive, and also the environment in general, nature and all the rest that exists in the ecosphere, all the earth systems that are part of these that we sometimes don't even acknowledge. So we do have these, we do not really understand, and then we call this this inner animal that is as being responsible for our criminal behavior, you know, when in fact that is, we cannot deny its influence, because these drives exist. They are part of life. They are part of all living organisms that need to survive, that are driven to reproduce. That's why it is important to understand these natural drives that can, under certain circumstances, become part of aggressive and even violent behaviors, and very dysfunctional behaviors, at least at the moral and the social level. but they cannot be understood if we don't understand that they are very deeply influenced by the other factors that are not biological but are also biological because they live in our they are part of our biological system, which are the sociocultural and ideological traits that are this is part of our, we could say, epigenetic cultural, epigenetic psychosociocultural reality. And by criminalizing the human nature for what is for sure part of human nature, but can only be explained if we understand if we have a comprehensive, a holistic understanding of the sociocultural nature of the human condition and what that really implies in reality, and what the circumstances, the individual circumstances, and the socio-economic and socio-cultural circumstances can multiply, can through it's like compound interest, it's like just compounding to the point that transform us into beasts. And that, if we do not understand it and we just blame human nature or our inner animal, we are justifying. We are not trying to explain. We are buying into the paradigm of the survival of the fittest, which is the survival of the meanest. It's this paradigm imposed by a capitalist society where people are supposed to pursue the pursuit of self-interest, and how this deeply affects our humanity. And we just do not perceive it. I mean, and we do not really understand it with the depth and the depth and the depth that it deserves. I mean, it's not only deserving, that is necessary for us to really move to a humanized society and a humanized civilization. And by humanized, I truly mean that we understand ourselves, we understand our humanity as part of the web of life, as we understand culture as part of the web of nature. Because there is no other way to build a functional society, a functional political economy, a functional culture, and a functional civilization, if we do not grasp it properly, grasp these concepts properly. Otherwise, it's just about division and fragmentation and tribalization and isolation, atomization, and giving and always just through justifying, instead of really seeking to explain and to be humble, instead of criminalizing the human nature. And I see so many people, well-intentioned people. I mean, I know people that really, but they buy into this framework, this mindset, and this is wrong. This is really wrong. This is a misconception and a misinterpretation. And you know, I said it before. I want to repeat it again. A little deception, a little, you know, a little mistake, a little omission, a little deception, a little lie. They compound together and they form a big lie. And we live in a web of deceit, intentionally crafted, intentionally to keep us divided. We have universal human rights, but we don't understand the universality of the human species, because that division is implanted on us since the division. We are being corrupted since from the beginning. We are not here, we are not educated or indoctrinated. Educated because education is indoctrination, and we always, we cannot, I want to repeat it again. Indoctrination and instrumentalization is something, it's our reality. All of us are indoctrinated and instrumentalized. Okay? Because we are domesticated animals. Just get it right. Because if we start to perceive ourselves like that, we do have already the possibility to start to understand us as we really are. Not these things that we imagine we are, for the good and for the wrong reasons. Not by denying our inner animal, but by not using it as an excuse to criminalize our species. Because most of our behavior is cannot be explained exclusively through our inner animal. If we don't have, if we don't add up, if we don't include the variables, the sociocultural and socioeconomic variables, you don't get it. You might create, I mean, beautiful, you might invent and design beautiful models and do whatever research do you want. You will always frame it in a way that you end up, or we end up, with the results that are expected, because they are already part of the frame of work that we use. You can call it scientific method or whatever you wish. It is a fact. The way things are framed, they will give us maybe not the expected result, but it's already the result is part is conditioned by the way we frame the models we use to do our research. Okay? So there is only one way to um, to to escape this um, this labyrinth, this maze, uh, and which is that we engage in a conscious transformative process, that we really screen the concepts, the ideas, the narratives that shape our psychosociocultural identity. So we need to build the critical analysis, or critical thinking, as you wish. You need to build that critical mass, but not only by seeing what's wrong in others. Okay? I listen to many different people from many different fields and the perspectives and walks of life, and I always see flaws. I mean, I can spot them easily. Limits, incorrections. Does it matter that I don't learn from them? Of course I do learn from them. But that's we need to understand the limitations of our, if we understand that most of our assumptions or our convictions are limited, they are far from being complete. They are far from that. They are far from being the final truth. All right. So they are part of a process. That's why I always try to say that we cannot understand if we don't start by understanding that everything about human life and human condition needs to be understood, the framework and the frame of mind, as processes, systems, and relations. Nothing exists outside of that. Concepts can be abstract. There is many, but the reality of a living organism is always confined through. This is the reality: processes, systems, and relations, connections. So therefore, we need to work with this frame of mind, and we need to understand the limitations and our innate inability to perceive the whole picture. That's why we need others to help us with that. That's why we need to have the universal perspective in terms of humanity, and the internationalist perspective in terms of economics and politics, and geopolitics and geostrategy. Otherwise, we just build division and fragmentation and destruction and destructive competition, not the natural competition that is part of the cooperation. Cooperation includes competition, but the constructive aspect of competition, not the zero-sum game competition that are the part of the system that controls our lives. So this is very important to grasp. This is what I'm trying to say, that we cannot buy into the framing of that we are subjected, that we are that we are always, that is, under this, the inner animal is always there, just waiting for the moment to take over us. It can happen. That is true, but that's not our reality. That is why it's very important to understand it, instead of 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 uh, of buying into our intrinsic, innate evilness to explain behaviors that are so extreme, so violent, so outrageous, that it seems to so many of us that there is no other explanation, but we have to 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 understand it as this is our inner animal. And this just that's the problem. That's not because this is a lie, but this is not even a half truth, much less than the half truth. But that has always to do with our condition. That is true. That's why we need to understand the true nature of the human condition, the socio-cultural. We need to understand what it really means to be a socio-cultural being, and why it matters. And why it matters in how we conceive and design societies and political economies and civilizations. And why are those who have been able to control for this kind of civilization that we have now, this imperialistic paradigm, civilizational imperialistic paradigm that is dominant, and it seems to us that it is inescapable, that we are condemned to live like this forever. No, we don't. And we can do it through the understanding of our very nature. Not through suppositions, not through models that paint us wrongly, that give us the wrong picture, but through the understanding with all aspects and facets of our socio-cultural nature. Okay? I'm going to end it here for today. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.